For nearly 8 decades, Glenn Miller's disappearance haunted music history. And now, everything just changed. A stunning new revelation has reignited the case fans believed would remain a mystery forever. What was once dismissed as unsolvable is suddenly being re-examined with chilling clarity. And if this latest breakthrough holds, the truth behind Glenn Miller's fate may finally be exposed. Did you know music entered Glenn Miller's life early, and by adolescence he had taken up the trombone, an instrument that would shape both his career and his distinctive musical voice? Miller's teenage years were marked by determination rather than instant brilliance. He practiced relentlessly, played in school ensembles, and absorbed the popular dance music of the day while developing an ear for arrangement and structure. After graduating high school, Miller attended the University of Colorado, where he played in campus bands and local orchestras. Although he left college to pursue music full-time, the experience sharpened his understanding of harmony and ensemble balance. Throughout the 1920s, he worked as a freelance trombonist, arranger, and sideman, collaborating with prominent musicians and band leaders. These years were financially uncertain, but they proved essential in refining the sound that would later make him famous. Miller learned how to write clean, memorable arrangements that emphasized clarity, rhythm, and emotional warmth. By the mid-1930s, Miller formed Glenn Miller and his orchestra, initially struggling to stand out in a crowded swing scene. His breakthrough came when he crafted a unique orchestral sound built around a smooth clarinet-led melody supported by saxophones, creating a lush yet instantly recognizable tone. This innovation propelled the band to extraordinary success. Between 1939 and 1942, Miller scored an unprecedented run of #1 hits, including In the Mood, Moonlight Serenade, Chattanooga Choo Choo, and Tuxedo Junction. His music dominated radio airwaves, sold millions of records, and appeared in popular Hollywood films, turning Miller into a national celebrity. In 1942, at the very height of his fame and commercial success, Glenn Miller made a decision that stunned both the music industry and the American public. With his orchestra dominating radio, record sales, and Hollywood, Miller voluntarily stepped away from civilian stardom to serve his country after the United States entered World War II. Unlike many entertainers who contributed through bond tours or morale appearances, Miller believed his skills could be used more effectively within the military itself. At the age of 38, well beyond the typical draft age, he enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces. Miller was commissioned as a major and assigned a unique mission: to organize, modernize, and lead military bands capable of lifting the spirits of millions of servicemen facing the realities of war. Drawing directly on his experience as a band leader and arranger, he set out to transform traditional military music, which he felt was outdated and disconnected from the tastes of young soldiers. Miller introduced swing rhythms and contemporary arrangements, blending discipline with popular appeal while still respecting military tradition. His work quickly expanded beyond rehearsals and concerts. Miller oversaw the formation of large ensembles, trained musicians, and carefully crafted performances designed to boost morale both at home and overseas. He also became deeply involved in radio broadcasts, understanding the power of music transmitted across oceans to remind troops of home. These programs were heard by American forces stationed throughout Europe, offering comfort, familiarity, and emotional connection during uncertain times. Though he no longer stood at the center of the commercial music world, Miller's influence arguably grew even larger within the military. His transition from celebrity band leader to commissioned officer reflected a profound sense of duty and patriotism. By translating his civilian artistry into military service, Glenn Miller reshaped how music functioned in wartime, proving that swing, when placed in uniform, could become a powerful weapon for morale and unity. By 1943, Glenn Miller's military service had reached its most demanding and influential phase. Now firmly established as Major Glenn Miller, he formed the Major Glenn Miller Army Air Forces Orchestra, an ambitious 50-piece ensemble that combined the precision of a military unit with the swing-driven energy of America's most popular music. Stationed primarily in England, the orchestra became a central force in the Allied effort to maintain morale among troops preparing for and enduring combat across Western Europe. Miller oversaw every aspect of the orchestra's operation, from selecting musicians and arranging music to organizing rehearsals and performance schedules. His perfectionism, long known in his civilian career, intensified under wartime conditions. The ensemble performed hundreds of concerts at air bases, hospitals, and military camps, often under difficult circumstances, including cold weather, long travel hours, and makeshift stages. Despite these challenges, the orchestra delivered polished performances that reminded soldiers of home, normalcy, and the life they were fighting to protect. In addition to live appearances, Miller placed enormous emphasis on radio. The orchestra broadcast regularly over shortwave through programs designed specifically for servicemen overseas. These broadcasts carried familiar swing melodies across battle zones, reaching troops who could not attend live concerts. For many soldiers, hearing Glenn Miller's unmistakable sound became a powerful emotional anchor, offering reassurance during some of the war's most uncertain months. By December 1944, as Allied forces pushed deeper into liberated Europe, Glenn Miller and his unit were preparing for a critical transition. With Paris freed from German occupation, plans were underway to relocate the Army Air Forces Orchestra from England to France, where the band would continue its morale-boosting mission for troops advancing toward the front lines. Miller was eager to move quickly, knowing that the holiday season was approaching and that music would be especially meaningful to soldiers far from home. The relocation, however, was repeatedly disrupted by severe winter weather. Dense fog, freezing temperatures, and unstable conditions over the English Channel made flying hazardous. Miller's scheduled travel was canceled twice, first on December 13th and again on December 14th, each delay compounding his frustration. As both a military officer and a band leader, he felt a deep responsibility to maintain the orchestra's schedule and feared that further postponements would undermine planned broadcasts and performances intended for Christmas and New Year's celebrations. Miller's anxiety was not rooted in personal ambition, but in his belief that timing mattered. The orchestra's presence in France was meant to coincide with a crucial period in the war when morale was being tested by exhaustion, cold weather, and ongoing combat. He worried that missing these dates would lessen the emotional impact the band could provide. Colleagues later recalled that Miller was restless during this period, determined to reach Paris as soon as conditions allowed. On December 15, 1944, Glenn Miller set out on what was meant to be a routine military transfer, unaware it would become one of the most enduring mysteries of World War II. That afternoon, he boarded a Nordøen UC-64A Norseman light aircraft at RAF Twinwood Farm near Bedford, England. The flight's destination was Villacoublay Aerodrome, just outside Paris, where Miller was scheduled to prepare for the arrival of his orchestra and resume broadcasts and performances for Allied troops newly stationed in liberated France. The aircraft was piloted by Flight Officer John R. Stuart Morgan, an experienced Royal Air Force pilot, with Lieutenant Colonel Norman F. Basel also aboard. At approximately 13:55 GMT, the Norseman took off under marginal winter conditions. Although the weather had improved enough to allow departure, the English Channel remained unpredictable, with cold temperatures and lingering fog posing serious risks to small aircraft. After takeoff, the plane vanished without a trace. No distress calls were ever received, and the aircraft failed to arrive in France. Subsequent searches yielded no confirmed wreckage, debris, or physical evidence of the crash. Despite extensive inquiries by military authorities, the exact fate of the aircraft and its 3 occupants remained unknown. Miller, one of America's most recognizable cultural figures, had disappeared mid-war, leaving behind unanswered questions and a stunned public. In the immediate aftermath of Glenn Miller's disappearance, the scale and urgency of wartime operations delayed recognition that anything had gone wrong. Allied forces were engaged in intense combat, and attention was rapidly shifting toward what would soon erupt as the Battle of the Bulge. Within this atmosphere of constant movement, disrupted communications, and overwhelming military priorities, the failure of a single small aircraft to arrive on schedule did not trigger immediate alarm. As a result, Miller's missing flight went unnoticed for several critical days. It was not until December 18, 1944, 3 days after the aircraft's departure, that the U.S. Army Air Forces formally realized that Miller had not reached Villacoublay Aerodrome in France. By then, hopes of a routine delay had faded, and concern quickly escalated. Internal inquiries were launched, but the absence of distress signals or wreckage offered no clear leads. The grim possibility that Miller and his companions had been lost over the English Channel became increasingly unavoidable. The task of informing Miller's family unfolded with painful caution. Beginning on December 23rd, military officials contacted his wife, Helen Miller, first by telephone and then through in-person visits. The news was delivered without certainty, leaving her suspended in a devastating limbo between hope and fear. She was told only that Glenn had failed to arrive as scheduled and that his whereabouts were unknown, a reality that reflected the uncertainty facing military authorities themselves. On December 24, 1944, Christmas Eve, the U.S. Army Air Forces issued an official press announcement confirming that Major Glenn Miller was missing in action. The timing was especially heartbreaking, casting a shadow over the holiday season for millions who had associated Miller's music with warmth, nostalgia, and comfort. As the news spread, the nation absorbed the loss with disbelief. Though no final confirmation of his fate could be given, Glenn Miller's disappearance was now public, marking a somber moment in American cultural and wartime history. Once Glenn Miller's disappearance was formally acknowledged, military authorities moved quickly to determine what had happened. The case carried unusual weight, not only because of Miller's global fame, but also due to his status as a commissioned officer on active duty. Major General Orville A. Anderson, deputy commander of the 8th Air Force and Miller's cousin by marriage, personally ordered an immediate search and a formal investigation, ensuring that the matter received serious attention despite the chaos of ongoing combat operations. Initial efforts focused on retracing the aircraft's intended route across the English Channel and reviewing flight conditions on December 15, 1944. Weather reports confirmed freezing temperatures, low cloud cover, and the persistent threat of ice accumulation, conditions especially dangerous for a small single-engine aircraft like the Nordøen UC-64A Norseman. Investigators also examined maintenance records and pilot logs, searching for any indication of mechanical weakness or procedural irregularities. In January 1945, a formal board of inquiry convened to assess the available evidence. With no distress signals, wreckage, or eyewitness accounts to rely on, the inquiry was forced to reconstruct events largely through inference. After weeks of review, the board concluded that the most probable cause of the disappearance was not enemy action, but a fatal combination of human error, mechanical failure, and severe weather conditions. Flying at low altitude over cold water increased the risk of ice forming on the aircraft, potentially compromising lift and engine performance and leaving little chance of recovery. Despite the official findings, the investigation ended without definitive proof. No physical remains of the plane, pilot, or passengers were ever recovered from the channel. This absence of evidence left room for speculation and alternative theories, but from a military standpoint, the case was closed. Glenn Miller was officially listed as missing in action, presumed dead. The unresolved nature of the tragedy only deepened its impact, transforming the loss of a beloved musician into a lingering wartime mystery that would endure for generations. For more than a year after Glenn Miller vanished over the English Channel, his fate remained officially unresolved. Under U.S. military protocol during World War II, service members listed as missing could not be declared dead until a full year and one additional day had passed without any evidence of survival. During this period, Miller and his two companions remained classified as missing in action, a designation that preserved a fragile hope while reflecting the grim uncertainty of wartime losses. On December 16, 1945, 1 year and a day after the disappearance, the military issued a formal finding of death for Major Glenn Miller, Flight Officer John R. Stuart Morgan, and Lieutenant Colonel Norman F. Bessel. The determination acknowledged that all reasonable efforts to locate the men or recover evidence of the aircraft had failed. Although the ruling provided administrative closure, it could not erase the mystery surrounding their final moments. For Miller's family, particularly his wife Helen, the decision marked the painful end of waiting and the beginning of permanent loss. The War Department formally published the finding of death in 1946, bringing the matter into the public record. By then, Glenn Miller's absence had already become deeply woven into the collective memory of the war. His music continued to be broadcast, and his role as both cultural icon and military officer was increasingly recognized as unique. He was not merely a civilian entertainer lost during wartime, but an active participant who had chosen to serve under hazardous conditions. In recognition of that service, Glenn Miller was posthumously awarded the Bronze Star Medal for meritorious achievement in a combat zone. The honor was presented to his wife, symbolizing both the nation's gratitude and the personal sacrifice behind his public legacy. Though no grave marked his resting place, the finding of death cemented Miller's status as a fallen serviceman. His legacy endures not only through timeless recordings, but through his commitment to uplifting others, even at the cost of his own life. What do you think about the Glenn Miller case? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.